Welcome to the Keith B Dixon Zone, dropping photography knowledge all day long. Right?
Yes, I just love that intro. Welcome to the Kilo Bravo Delta Zone. It's official. My name is Keith B Dixon, commercial photographer, and your host in this podcast photography zone. On today's episode, we have Terrell Lloyd, the San Francisco 49ers team photographer and the only African-American NFL photographer in the league officially right now. Yes. In addition to his NFL responsibilities, Terrell also photographs for San Jose State's athletics department, which covers a wide range of other sports like lacrosse, volleyball, basketball. So this guy, he has an amazing reach on sports photography, unlike most other photographers. So Terrell is he's really stretching the bar. Terrell is also actively involved in his industry. He is a Professional Photographers of America's member, and he holds the title of Craftsman. He is also the recipient of the Xposure 101 Legends Award, which honors photographers of color who have achieved progression to the highest level in their field, and he has definitely done that. Terrell is native to San Francisco, grew up with the 49ers, and a really good friend of mine. You guys, Terrell Lloyd.
And thanks for having me, Keith. I really appreciate it. I'm here in Detroit with you guys and really excited about the conference we're about to do for Xposure 101. But I'm also a photographer for San Jose State as well. I've been doing their athletic program for about 12 years now, when I first got there. So, and what's different about that is I get to cover a multiple number of sports, not just only football. But we're doing swimming, we're doing tennis, we're doing golf, we're doing gymnastics. I mean, whatever sports that they have in their Division I, and it gives me a variety to shoot outside of the football season.
Well, see, we just learned something new. It's not just football,
exactly,
right? So you're a versatile photographer. So you know what? Take us to you're a humble guy, Terrell. I've always known you to be that way. Take us to your first experience on a sideline. And it doesn't have to be a new experience, but at what point in your career where you stand on the sideline and there was some superstar NFL player standing next to you and you said, you know what, I'm actually here and I got a big responsibility, OMG. Like, was there one of those moments?
Well, it was funny because, I sat in the stands at the 49ers games. I saw them win all those 5 Super Bowls as a fan. And when I started shooting photography part-time when I had my regular job, I had a luxury of getting on the field. One of the former players got me a credential from their PR department at the time, and I got on the field, and it was one of those wow moments, right? I hadn't been shooting sports, since like high school. So, but you're down there, you're with the other photographers, and you're with the players, and you have that wow moment. You're a deer in the headlights. And then that season ended, and I had the opportunity to get some credentials the next year, and the Raiders moved back up here from L.A., and I said, wow, well, let me put in for some credentials there. And I was able to get on the sideline. And it was one of those learning experiences where, I had to learn how to shoot football because I was a fan. And basically, I would be shooting behind the camera, then I would stop shooting and watching the game and missing the shot because I wasn't really paying attention. So I had to really, evolve into a photographer. And it kind of like worked the system over the years. And what really made me a big break was digital technology after I learned after a few years.
Was there a mentor or somebody who kind of guided you along, or was it just baptism by fire?
Well, it's funny. There was a guy in LA named Kevin, and I was down there shooting. I had, one camera and a 70-200 lens, and he said to me, look, if end of the season one time, and he says, if you want to be taken seriously in this business, you at least got to get a 300 2.8 lens. And I took that to heart. And, that was about $6,000 lens at the time. And the next season came, and I was out there with that 300. So I was trying to learn what was it going to take to become, a great or a good, excellent photographer, sports photographer, really, but yet for people to take you seriously in doing your craft and what you were doing.
And you also achieved Craftsman in photography.
From PP of A, yes. And,
wow.
And that's from, when I was working my IT job, I joined this photography association called PPGBA, Professional Photographers of Greater Bay Area. And, some people mentored me there from weddings and portraits and taking classes. And I joined PP of A, and then all of a sudden I started speaking. Because the reason why I started speaking was when I was going to these conventions, and back in the day, shooting weddings, people put great images up there. They're shooting weddings in Italy, Paris, France, all over the place. And I'm like, well, hey, I'm shooting a wedding over in Oakland. So, but I need to know what camera you're using, what film were you using, what's your f-stop shutter speed, what was your thought process? And then some people told me, it's like, well, Terrell, why don't you start speaking? I said, well, what am I speak about? Well, speak about how you got started, how you got on the football field, how you're doing this now. And so I started speaking, and that's how I got into the speaking circuit over 20 years ago. So my responsibility is I could show great photos, right? Everybody has excellent photos, but I'm a techie guy. So I want to know what cameras, what lenses, what f-stops, what shutter speed, what's your thought process? What made you do this position for this photo? So I wanted to always get into the mind of a photographer, but then also show nice photos, but this is how I got the photo. And that's how I think people would learn from the technical aspect. And I think that's my duty, because when you're growing up, what happened if teachers didn't want to teach, or professors didn't want to, lecture? How are you going to learn? So the thing is, that's where I took it to that part there. So that's why I love speaking and teaching.
So you are a techie. So do you feel technology is important? Is it something that we should pay more attention to, less attention? Is it just an application? Like, how would you define that?
Well, I think technology is important, because if you look at today, look at what we're doing with cell phones. You can take, pictures with cell phones and blow them up, and, with great quality. So everything is an evolution. So my first digital camera, like I said, cost me $12,000, was 2 megapixels. But that's what got me in the door with the 49ers, because they were evolving. They were bringing the internet in-house. I was at the right place at the right time. I was in there doing stuff indirectly with the team, but I saw, working in IT, where technology was going. And so I made an investment. And one of the guys said, hey, we're bringing our internet in-house. I want to bring you in to do our digital photography. Their longtime team photographer, which is still there today. He's a contracted photographer, but he was doing film. I brought in digital. So if you look at to where, from 1997, from 2 megapixels to where we're at today, look at the evolution of everything that's going. So, and it's not going to stop, so people have to embrace the technology and learn how to use it. One of my things is, do you pull the camera out the box without reading the manual? Right. You have to read the manual. You have to know what that camera's capability of what it can do. And you got to tweak the camera for your style. Just like if you buy a new car, right? You have to adjust the car seat. You have to adjust the steering wheel. You make finite adjustments for your comfort. So the same thing with the camera for the capabilities of what the camera is doing, especially for sports, and the settings you have to change differently if you're shooting portraits, or if you're shooting some commercial, if you're shooting product photography. Everything has to be a little bit different.
And you're from San Francisco? Are you native to San Francisco? What's the relationship with the Bay Area?
Well, I was born in Houston, but my mother raised me in San Francisco. I came out here when I was 3 months old, and I lived in Haight-Ashbury. So I used to go to games when I was 10, 11 years old at Kezar.
Oh, right.
And and the funny story is, when I used to have a paper route, and after the games on Sunday, I would get in the games Sunday, I'd throw my papers. On Monday, I'd get another paper. I would make my own photo books, not knowing I was going to be a photographer, and not knowing I was going to be the photographer for the San Francisco 49ers. I'm pretty humbled by that, because you never know where your path is going to lead you. And I feel like I've come, full circle from cutting out from the Examiner on Monday mornings pictures of the 49ers when Gene Washington, John Brody, all those guys were playing. And now I run everything for the 49ers. Me and my crew and my team. Yeah.
That is amazing, man. When I look at your career over the years, you said a great image is a great image, but what's behind the mindset? Tell us a little bit about what you're thinking. Let's say game day. Game day. You wake up in the morning. What's the first thought that goes through your mind?
Well, it's like, first thing is like, you never want to be late. So everything and working in the NFL, it's like everything's on a time thing, right? And you got to have a game plan where you're going in, because there's so many things that's going on, so many things I'm responsible for, me and my crew, that's out there shooting with me, because it's like there's pregame that's going on. There's the player arrivals. There's cheerleaders coming out. I mean, there's a lot of components that go to it where it's like you have to have all your ducks in a row, and you got to have your list of what you're going to do. But then again, there's still the game that has to be done, right? And there's always, I mean, I've been doing this for 20 years with the Niners, and it's just like a player. You get a little nervous, you get a little anxious. You're getting hyped up when the pregame's going on. We're doing photos there. Guys are running around and got music going. And then, then it's time for kickoff, right? And so you take a deep breath, because you never know what the outcome is going to be, right? But basically, our job is to capture the story of what's going on in that game that day, from start to finish, basically. And with the crew that I have, it's a matter of being in the right position, the right time, capturing, and it's not just capturing the touchdown or a great catch. It's all about, what's telling the story for that game that we have to display on our galleries, or what we're going to use for marketing, or what we're going to use for, website or Twitter. I mean, there's a lot of components that go into it. So, and it's not just like the running backs running down the field, coming through the line with the ball. It's a matter of like, what are they going to tell that story in article after the game, right? And even during the game, because we're posting in real time, we're shooting wirelessly. So there's a lot of components that goes on. But then it's a matter of just being in the right position at the right time. I said in my presentation, I have on one of my slides, it's like, for every action, there's a reaction. So, and what I mean by that, it's like you could get an action picture, but what's the reaction after that? What's going on after the play, or what's going on before the play? What is the coach talking to the player about if it's a timeout? I mean, so your head is on a swivel and you're looking at everything that's going on that's nonstop. You don't get a timeout, right? There's no timeout for photographers, and there's no do-overs, right? So it's a matter of, if something's coming in front of you, you have to be ready for your area and your coverage in that part of the field. Now, I missed some shots in my earlier years there, and one of our other photographers that used to be with us years ago, he taught me, he says, cover your zone, cover your area where you're at. If it's out of your area across the field where you're not there, it's kind of like, make sure if something's in front of you that you're going to capture it. So it's a lot of pressure most of the time too, as well.
So you earlier when we started, you mentioned process. I created a process because and it's called a creative zone. I'm actually teaching it here today at Xposure 101, and I'm going to explain it to you, and I want you to kind of tell me how similar it is to what you do. I typically, what I've seen over the years is a lot of photographers will go into a situation and just really start sitting on the shutter button without rhyme or reason for the most part. I mean, there's a reason and there's a rhyme, but it's not connected to what they're actually seeing. They're just out there and they're just going. And so the very first step in this process, called the creative zone, is the absorption phase. And in the absorption phase, it's literally like, examine the area first before you get into it and kind of have an ideal. It's almost a reversal. Now, the ideal behind it is when we're out there, our adrenaline is going. There's a lot of things that we could be missing. How does that play into what you do as a photographer?
Well, I mean, I think too, and what I tell people as well is like, in becoming a photographer or shooting sports photography as well, right? It's a matter of knowing the sport, understanding the sport, understanding what entails in shooting that sport. So I'll give you a prime example. I was a photographer for a lacrosse team for a couple of years, outdoor lacrosse team in San Jose, and an indoor lacrosse team. Now, I didn't know anything about lacrosse, right? So how was I going to approach that and shooting it and covering it? I mean, what's going to make, excellent images? And then it's a matter of like learning the sport itself, and then coming up with, say, okay, this is my process going in, covering this game, covering, what's a good action photo, how will you tell the story? So it's a matter of a thought process and going in and say, okay, if they're running down with this ball and a stick, and then they're passing it to another guy, right? What is their game plan? So now I got to have a game plan to where, okay, if this person, I always want to get a shot with them with the stick and the ball, and not just running down the field. So it's kind of like you got to develop, your style and moving around and how you're going to shoot this lacrosse game that now you're responsible for. So I think everybody has to have, a certain, and like you say, process or game plan, or coming in saying, here's the steps that I'm going to go through to make sure that this is going to be, I'm going to do this efficiently, put it that way.
So there's got to be, would you agree that there's got to be a process?
Oh, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. Because you can't go in not knowing what you're going to do, right? If you go, if you go to work and you don't know what you're going to do that day, and you don't have procedures for your job, or, it's not going to work. I worked in IT, and I worked in their computer department, right? And we had mainframes in our data center. And if we had issues and the mainframe went down, if we didn't have procedures or a process to bring, call in service or reboot the mainframe, we would be in trouble. So my job at one time was to write procedures for the operators, right? And I'm talking about step-by-step procedures. If this happened, this is what you got to do going here. So we all had all these processes going in. So I think that's the way I'm built and wired, in developing. That's
a really good point. Do you feel like your prior experience as an IT person in the, because it's very methodical.
Yes.
I mean, IT is step by step.
Right.
No rock unturned. Do you feel like that's really helped you as a photographer to be more analytical about your shots?
I think so. I think it has. I mean, because everything has to have structure. And one of my videos that people will see tomorrow on my presentation is one of my photographers says, Terrell gets us all together. He has a game plan. Everybody has their assignments, and we go out and we execute what we need to do for that day. Because if someone deviates from that assignment, right, and goes off and tries to do their own thing, then we miss something over here. Well, you didn't stick to the plan, right? And the plan is not, and it's not all about for me, right? I mean, I've done a lot of things, right? I've gotten to this point, by persistence, hard work, doing the right thing, being the right person, right? And the people that I brought on with my crew and my photography team, it's all about us. It's all about everybody achieving a goal. But it's like this one phrase, and the team uses a lot of phrases, and it's like it's all about one team. It's about working together as a team, and that's why I enjoy teaching, because it's like still, just educating people in that aspect too, though.
That's powerful. So look, I always like to put my guests on the spot, with a question. It's friendly, but
yeah.
You're a front runner in the NFL as a photographer. You are the guy, and it's a fact that you are the only official person of color in your capacity. Is that?
Well, I mean, at the beginning, yes. I mean, when I first, officially got with the 49ers as a contractor, there was no other black photographers. That was like, I mean, there's minority photographers that are out there shooting, covering the games maybe for, wire services or AP or certain things like that, but not officially with the team. And yes, I was the first African-American to be like an official team photographer for a major NFL team. Recently, one of my friends, I helped out, and I don't really like to talk about that much, but referred to him when the Rams moved from St. Louis back to LA. And he ended up, I helped, gave a reference, and he ended up landing the team photographer job for the Los Angeles Rams last year. So it's almost like paving the way and helping, not just minorities, but people, and helping them get to the next spot. And now he's heading into his second year as the Rams lead photographer now, from what I just understood. So when I talked to him last week, and for myself, when we opened
is he official?
He's a contract photographer. So it's like, I mean, there's only about 12 teams that really have full-time team photographers now.
Oh, wow.
And when I was at the Super Bowl this last year and working with NFL.com, working with Ben Liebenberg, and we were counting up like, okay, which teams have, full-time photographers? So about 12 teams that we counted out. So, and then usually all the other team photographers are all contracted. And my thing was, when we were at Candlestick and the ownership decided to build a new stadium, I said, that's my plan I wanted to become an employee of the 49ers. And so I came in with a plan, stating I'm practically full-time now. Here's what I do for the club. I sat down with the president at the time, And he said, yeah, so we're going to do this, that. And we got another guy that's coming in. He's going to be running all our stadium operations, our digital website, production, and it'll be a perfect fit. And that's when I became a full-time employee. And since then, I just recently got promoted to senior manager of photography services for the San Francisco 49ers / team photographer as well.
Congratulations.
But I'm running all of their photography related services for the organization with the stadium in conjunction. I mean, I shoot anywhere from food products for our food services, for our mobile app, all our, for marketing. I mean, you name it, we cover it.
What kind of pressure? Being the first is always a lot of pressure, and how does that feel? Like what? How do you define that?
It's hard to define where it's like a challenge on certain things, right? And it's a matter of if someone says, hey, we need to do this shoot. I'll give you an example. When I was doing product photography, I never stopped product photography, right? But I believe I could shoot anything, but it's a matter of learning how to shoot it. So one of the local camera stores in the Bay Area that was a staple in the Bay Area, unfortunately, it's closed recently after 50 years, I guess. I used to go in there, they would give me a lot of help, right? I say, I got to do this product shoot. What's the best way to do it? And then we would sit down for about an hour and we would map it out. Here's the lights you need. Here's what's at. And I did jobs that I'd never done before. So it's the same thing with what we're doing. What I do in sports is I look at it as a challenge. And then when you're challenged, that keeps you going, right? That keeps the adrenaline going. That keeps it's like, okay, how am I going to figure this out? How am I going to make the best image for this? Or how am I going to, produce a high quality product, right? And then once you master it and you do it, it's not a sigh of relief, but it's a sigh of accomplishment, put it that way.
I typically view success, for me, the word success equals temporary. I mean, you could fall out of the bed and say, I'm going to make 10 phone calls today and make the 10 phone calls, get no results. But you could say, hey, I was successful in completing my 10 calls and live off of that thought. I'm more about progression, and I've watched you progress over the years. What are some of the defining qualities? Because people, and I know there's a lot of people out there that they think they have it, or they're trying to figure out how to have it. If you had to lay out some qualities about, what it takes to be an NFL photographer, what are those qualities going to be?
And it's not just about shooting great pictures, I don't think, right? It's about, personality as well. I mean, how do you deal with people? How do you deal with, issues? I mean, it's like all these photographers, all of us, like I said earlier in the program here, we all take great pictures, right? But what are some of your tangibles that makes you stand out more than the others, right? And give you a small example. When I first, when I first started shooting on the field, and I've been down there a couple of years, right? A gentleman came in, he was shooting the entertainment stuff, and the cheerleaders at halftime, the national anthem, the pregame shows, halftime shows. And he came over to me and said, Terrell, hey, how would you like to do what I'm doing? I'm getting a little older now. My knees are getting kind of bad. Come down to my office and I'll talk to you. I go down to his office and he tells me everything that he wants me to do. And then I asked a question, because I only been out there shooting for a couple of years, right? I said, Doug, why me? Why me out of all the photographers that are around, and I've only been here coming into the stadium for 2 years? He said, you know something? You come in here with a smile on your face. You say hello to everybody. You're pleasant. I said, I figured you would be good for the job. Doug hadn't seen one picture that I had taken.
Wow.
But he judged me on my personality, and he know that I was a photographer, and that's what got me that position there as well. So it's I think it's a lot of personality has to do with it too as well, and how you treat people.
How do you teach your photographers that? So you mentioned running a crew is difficult. Most people have no idea. There's varying personalities, and everybody on the crew typically thinks they know more than they really know, or they could do the job better. I'm sure you've experienced that over the years.
Yes. Yeah.
How do you manage that? How do you manage people that you work with?
Well, it's one thing, you just let them be themselves, really. I mean, you give them the assignments, you let them go out and take the photos, you you don't overmanage, you don't micromanage them, right? And then when it's time, I mean, during the games, it's funny because when we're covering the whole field, and the expectations are high, right? Because at the end of the day, it has what I want to say, not say my name on it, but it's a matter of if you're working for the organization, not going to come back to one of my crew members and say, hey, what happened? They're going to come to Terrell and say what happened, right? Wow. So everybody has to be accountable for what they're doing, right? But the one thing that works pretty well is in giving them praise, because if something happened on their side of the field and they got an excellent shot over there and so on and so forth, and then sometimes one person will come over to me and it's like they'll come over smiling, right? And it's like, did you get the shot? And it's like, yeah, I got the shot. It's like, all right, nice shot. We do a little fist pump, and then they go back to their side of the field and they're feeling pretty good. And that's what keeps them, I think, empowered as well. And you say, well, what happens when they don't get the shot? Well, it's human. I mean, you can't get everything, right? But, 9 times out of 10, we're going to capture it. We're going to get it. We're going to get some variations of a play. And like I say, it doesn't have to be that fingertip catch, right? But they may have caught the ball running for the end zone, but we got part of the play. So I think it's just empowering them to do their job and making them feel good as well. I mean, one thing when we started putting pictures around the stadium, and they get a couple pictures up too as well, right? Now, I've been shooting for a long time, and now we got a new stadium, and our longtime team photographer had all the historical stuff, so he got the lion's share of it, which is okay because I wasn't around during all those 5 Super Bowls. But when you get a few pictures on the wall, and if you saw one of your pictures on the wall, Keith, and you've been working with me at Candlestick for 3-4 years, it didn't matter if it was 1 picture or if it was 10 pictures. It's like you had a photo on the wall. I mean, how would that make you feel, right? And you're part of the crew, right? And I have a picture that hopefully if I get time to show that tomorrow when I'm speaking, and it's a picture of my photography crew, and that's one of the most diverse crews that you would see. I got African Americans in that crew. I got Chinese people in the crew. I mean, it's like when you look at it, I got a couple of Latin girls. I mean, so when you look at it, I got females in there, and it's very diverse when you look at it. And it's just a matter of giving people opportunities to do things. And some people carry my gear. I'm working with 5 cameras during the home games. I'm working with a 600 millimeter lens, a 400 millimeter lens, a 300, 7200, 2470. I have a think tank waistband around me with pouches, that I use for their, for holding lenses and stuff. So there's a lot of things that I'm covering that I'm doing during the game, and sometimes it takes hand. And one of the persons is just really a grip, right? But they're having a good time. Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. I've seen you in action, and it's a sight to see, in terms of just how focused you are, like OMG to the 10th, I mean, I see it. It's almost like you're going to play the game. I'm sure our listeners are curious about a lot of integral things. Let's talk about game day. You're traveling. You get to the stadium. Like, how complicated is it to travel with the team and do what you do?
It's funny. It's like a well-oiled machine, right? Everything is like precision, and everything is on a time base, right? It's a matter of if the buses are rolling at 9, it's rolling at 9. It's not rolling at 9:05, 9:01. It's rolling at 9, right? So the object and the way the NFL works, if you're 5 minutes early, you're late.
Wow.
Right? So the process is you got to be there early before that, right? So it's like on a game day, if we leave on a Friday and, the buses are rolling at 2, my process is I'm on the bus by 1:30. No ifs, ands, or buts. I'm a half hour on the bus before we even roll, right? I'm out there, I'm taking photos of players, coming out, getting on the buses, so on and so forth. But I have enough time to relax and get my, suitcase under the bus and everything. My gear travels in a hard case with all the equipment for the Niners.
Is it super big? Or
oh, it's a big hard case, and it's like a case for like they use for concerts.
Concerts,
right?
Okay.
So, but I only carry like a lens, a flash, one camera with me. All my other big lenses go in the hard case. So we get to the airport. And getting off the buses on the plane, and as we travel. So once we get to a city, on a Friday night or Friday afternoon. Basically, we have that night off, right? You know, we have food at the hotel, so on and so forth. Saturday is the walkthrough. I normally don't shoot the walkthrough with the players, but most of the time I have.
What's a walkthrough for our listeners?
So a walkthrough for the players is like, it's like a mini practice, but they're not hitting each other, not running around. So it's basically going over the game for the next day. So the players, they'll go out to the stadium and they'll line up in certain positions, and then, you know, basically coach calling out plays, and they're literally like mimicking what they're going to do. Right. So they're out there for about, you know, maybe an hour and a half, loosening up, stretching, things like that. Then they come back. And so it's basically a lot of meetings and then just getting ready for that game day on Sunday. Usually I have a Saturday off. A couple of years ago when we were winning, we used to do some rallies in the city where we were at, you know, just to get our traveling fans that come out that are local fans in that area. And that was kind of fun because you know, we go out to a restaurant, we give out towels and, you know, just, you know, talk Niners. So everybody's in their Niner gear. We get photos and so on and so forth. So those have been fun over the years doing that as well. But now I get a Saturday off, and then it's game day Sunday. And I take the early buses out. We have 2 sets of buses that goes out. The early buses are usually about 9, because we get there about 3 hours before the game, right? Second set of buses leave 1 hour after that. So if it's a 9 o'clock bus, then second set of bus will leave there at 10, right? I get on the 9 o'clock bus. Same thing applies. Get my breakfast. Everything's timed to a T, to where I'm down, I'm eating breakfast. I get on the bus still about maybe 20, 25 minutes before the bus is going to take off.
Right.
Get to the stadium. I find my case. I look for all my gear, you know, unpack my gear, get everything ready. Then I'll go out and shoot pregame. Right? Get the guys stretching and warm up even before they're in uniform. Sometimes we'll do a few locker room shots, and so then they got their uniforms on, get some more photos, right? And then it's just ready for game time. Yeah.
Wow, man, that sounds.
But then again, I forgot, like after the game it's like usually, you know, we're rolling like at least about an hour and a half after the game. Now imagine that you got about 50 cases you got to pack up, get back in the truck, get everybody back after a game, shower, you know, dress. They got a few interviews they have to do. And then it's just a process of it's like a mad dash after that. Right.
So when you get off the airplane, where do you guys pick up your case at? How does
the equipment managers they have a big old truck with all the cases, everything goes to the stadium.
Oh, okay.
I don't see my case until Sunday morning with all my gear.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Have you ever forgotten something like a card holder or card? Like
it's funny you say that, right? So this happened 2 years ago, and luckily it was on a short trip, right? And usually I leave my case up under the stairway, pack it up, and then the equipment guys would take it and get ready to put it on the truck on a Friday, right? So I was going by the stairway. I saw my case. I was going to go by the stairway. I already had my case packed up. And I said, no, they always get my case, right? They always get my case. I didn't go check that day, right? So I'm on the plane, and about 15 minutes into the flight, equipment manager says, kneels down by my seat. He says, Terrell, hey, did you need anything out that case that we normally bring of yours? And I thought he was joking with me for some reason. I'm like, well, yes, it has all my camera gear in it. He holds his head down. And he says, well, we forgot it. And I'm like, no, really? And he's like, he looks at me like, yeah, we forgot it. Right. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I stayed pretty calm, and I'm like, looked at him like, what are we going to do? Right. So, you know, he said, well, let me see what we can do. So he got on the phone, and we had to, call back to the facility, see if it was in the spot where it was still there. So they had to make arrangements for the airline, and our security took the case in a truck over to the airport, shipped it. Right. And luckily we were only going to Phoenix. Right.
Right.
So it got there that night, and I had to go pick it up that night.
Oh my goodness.
And so, but if my thing, and I always forgot to ask him, was like, how did he know it wasn't on the plane at that point? Right. Unless he was taking his case count.
Right.
Right. And after that, I made a point to check my case. Now I roll my case up to the truck myself all the time now.
Oh, wow.
I don't put it in the responsibility of, their hands. As long as I know,
right.
I wheel it up. Okay, my case is ready. So you learn from that experience and stuff like that. Now I don't know what I would have done when I got to Phoenix and game day Sunday. I wouldn't have had no cameras except for one little camera with a lens. Yeah.
What I've actually seen you on television at the Super Bowls that you photographed, and what is that experience like? Because most people will never experience a live Super Bowl on the field.
Yeah.
what's going through your mind as you're standing there, pregame, and you look around and there's photographers from all over the world.
Yes.
There's security everywhere. You can't breathe without getting asked who you are.
Or do you have credentials? Yeah.
What is that like?
It's when you look at the Super Bowl, the biggest sport in the world, right? And all eyes are on that game that day. And it's like, and then you have the opportunity to cover it or shoot it or to be in it when we were in the 2012 Super Bowl. And that was an experience where it was like, I was so nervous when we were in 2000. Because like I mentioned, I wasn't there during all the other Super Bowls. And going through the playoff runs, there's a different intensity in the playoffs, right? And you could feel it, right? From the players, from the coaches to the fans to, even shooting and making sure that, you're ready to go as a photographer and still doing the same things you do during a regular season. But yet the intensity just goes up because the magnitude of that game is bigger. So now imagine the Super Bowl. Now we're in the 2012 Super Bowl. I think I was nervous from the time we walked into the stadium during the whole game.
Really?
I never relaxed during the whole game. I was so intense, and because that was actually my first Super Bowl with the Niners. Now, even though I've covered Super Bowls, but it's like my first Super Bowl with the Niners, and
wow.
and the magnitude of it, right? So I never could really calm myself down, right? And I was always intense, and then especially when we made the comeback, it's like the intensity even got even larger. And so imagine this, I put my photographers in certain positions and I cover my area. Remember, you got to cover your zone in your area,
right?
And make sure they're covering theirs, because you can't do 5 different things at one time. You only can do one thing in your area, right? So imagine this: the game is coming down to the last 2 minutes, and they're driving down the field, and your heart's pounding, right? And you're literally shaking a little bit because now you have a vested interest, right? Now, Keith, as you're a photographer, now you may be shooting the game, you're covering it for AP or Getty or whatever, right? And you're just doing your job because now you have an interest, you have a job, but I have a vested interest. I mean, I'm part of the team, right? So there's 2 minutes left in the game, and it's first and goal to 7, and your heart is racing, right? And I had to take a mental check. Okay, is my camera set? Everything, the settings are correct. Okay, is my shutter speed right? My aperture is right. Okay, I got it locked in case I hit the dial where it won't change. I'm going through all these mental checklists on what I'm doing. And then, we get down to the 5. And then it's like, 3 plays with a minute and something left, right? The first pass comes your side. They miss it, right? Okay. Now it's 3rd and goal. Next pass, come to your side of the field again, and they miss it. Now it's 4th and goal with 1 minute and 2 seconds to go in the Super Bowl. And you're thinking, wow. I took a deep breath. My assistant that was carrying the camera with me, she looked at me like with deer in the headlights, right? And you always dream of getting the winning catch of a Super Bowl, right? Oh, and it's 4th and goal at the 5, and that pass comes right towards me, right? I had the right camera, the right lens, everything was set, and they missed the ball by maybe 2 fingertips or whatever it was, right? And at that point, you lost the game, right? It's so such a surreal feeling that I feel it now even thinking about it, right? But going back to covering the Super Bowls it's one of the things that I wish everybody could experience. It's just it's an experience in life that's just the best ever, especially when you love football. And I grew up with football going back to Kezar when I was a kid.
How do you? I love sports. I'm a big football fan, but I mean, it's crazy as it sounds, being a photographer and loving football. It's not the thing that I enjoy photographing, but if I did, how would I get started? What do I do? Like,
sometimes you got to start like even shooting high school sports or Little League or, Pop Warner football. I mean, you got to gain some experience somewhere. I mean, it's a matter of, and like say in my presentation too that I have, it's a matter of, gaining that experience on how to shoot and how to cover it, right? And shooting youth soccer. High school is good. Like I say, you do a small college is excellent as well. I mean, you just have to gain that knowledge and experience as well and get out there and shoot. The more you shoot, the better you're going to get, right? When I first started shooting, I didn't know what I was doing. but I learned how to shoot. And I learned how to look at it. I mean, my approach was when I took a portrait class, a portrait lighting class, right? And environmental portraits. And I apply the same thing from my portrait class when I'm out there shooting sports. Where's the direction of light coming from? Where are the angles? I mean, is it overcast? Is it you have a shadow that's going across the field? How am I going to shoot that angle? So I would say practice, really.
How do you see your end game in terms of who you are as a photographer? And let me refine that question just a little bit. How does Terrell Lloyd see himself as a photographer?
Well, I still try to get better every day. I mean, I tell people all the time, I'm only as good as my last picture I shot yesterday, right? I mean, people could say, man, Terrell shot great pictures 5 years ago, but what has he done today?
Right.
So I take that approach where I don't really settle and like say, well, I've been doing it 20 years. I've made it. I can relax and, I don't have to shoot as much. No, I got to be better than what I was yesterday. That's the way I look at myself. It's like you have to always strive to get better, right? And you're never too, like when I say not too old, but to stop learning different things, right? Because of evolution, we talk about technology, right?
Absolutely.
It's like you have to embrace technology or else it's going to leave you behind.
Absolutely.
Right? And then the others are going to catch up. And not that it's a race and not that you don't want them to catch up, but it's like you want to stay, when I would say, relevant somewhat. And then I would say on that as well is at the end of the day, by me teaching and speaking and giving people opportunity, it's just a matter of I want people to say, man, Terrell was a good dude.
Right.
He spoke, his mind. He spoke where, how he felt, but it was a matter of, at the end of the day, I could walk up and ask him a question or I learned this from him, or if it's one thing here and there. I mean, it's like we take things from other photographers and it's all little tidbits here, right? And you add it to your little toolbox, right?
Right.
And then you create it from there. It's like I relate to cooking. Now I can't cook, but it's a matter of you got all these little components, right? And you put it together, and you see a recipe here, a recipe there, or somebody say, hey, I made this spaghetti and I used this. Like, oh wow, I want that spice over here. And so it's the same thing in photography. You're just taking little tidbits, f-stops, shutter speeds, ISOs, cameras, lenses. Yeah.
How do you, we're here at Xposure 101. What is it about Xposure that, I mean, this is a commitment. I mean, you flew in, you're taking time away from work. We're giving our time. What is it about Xposure? You could speak anywhere in the country. I'm going to say in the world. Why here?
Because I mean, you're never too big for whatever stage it's on, right? And if you have an opportunity to speak and teach, even if it's to kids in middle school or high school, right? It's just a matter of just sharing your knowledge and sharing your wisdom. And so, and if you can make somebody's day or week and they come out to hear you speak and they're excited about you coming to hear your story or your techniques or see a couple of pictures or talk to you on the side and ask you your experiences on what you do, then it's worth it to me. I mean, it's like I enjoy talking, I enjoy teaching, because at a young age, somebody took me by my hand and said, okay, we're going to teach you how to bowl. Because I used to be a professional bowler back in the day. I left that out. I was pretty good at a young age, and I went out on the Pro Bowlers Tour when I was 21 years old.
Oh, wow.
And so, but somebody taught me, right? So all my life coming up, someone took me by the hand and said, let me show you the way.
Right.
So it's kind of like, I think you when you grew up that way, that's how you give back the same way.
Right.
Because you want to teach others, right? In regards if it's kids or adults, right? We all thirst for knowledge, I would say.
Right.
Right. And I think that's what's ingrained in me now. So that's why I do what I do. That's why I speak. That's why I come out and it could be 10 people or 200 people.
What makes a good speaker or instructor?
Well, I mean, I think, it still goes back to being true to who you are and what you do and the information that you provide. And it has to be correct information, of course, right? And it has to make sense. So it's, all the above. I mean, personality. I mean, it's like being willing to, I had I don't know if I want to tell the story, but I remember in Vegas one time and young lady from, matter of fact, she was from Detroit years ago, came to some of my speaking things, and they would talk to me. And then on the trade show floor, she would come over and like, hey, I was in your program. Thanks a lot. And I would stand there and give her 5, 7, 10 minutes and talk to her. Right. And, it's like, but I was never too busy not to talk to people. Even some of my friends who's the team is like, well, Terrell's holding court over here. I'm going to go over here and look at this. But my friends wouldn't get mad at me, but they knew the way I was. Right. And they came up to me one day, the same person said, I really appreciate what you do. And she said, because, you're a big time photographer, but you give me time, and you stop and you talk. And I'm like, I don't consider myself big time because I'm pretty humble. Right. But she said that, I met other photographers that speak, and, and I try to talk to them after I came, and they wouldn't give me like 30 seconds. Yeah. And they would walk away and wouldn't talk. She said, but you stop and you'll have a conversation with people. And that's what makes it special. And I think that's what I think speakers should do. And I'm not saying it's their obligation, but it's like, it's like, you gotta be real with the people. You gotta be, like I say, I'm humble. And I appreciate people coming to my programs and wanting to stop and talk to me and ask a question about photography, right? It's not like, I'm not gonna blow you off and like, okay, yeah, thanks for coming to the program. And then I keep walking on because I got somewhere to go, right? Yeah, we all got somewhere to go, but I'll get there later.
That's interesting. Yeah, I totally agree with you. And we're gonna be wrapping this up. I hope if you're listening to this podcast, I hope you guys are just really digesting these nuggets. Terrell, he's putting his heart on the line right here, just really telling us, the real trials and tribulations of what it takes. And Terrell, I gotta thank you, man. For taking time out. I know this is when you come down to Xposure. Typically, we don't get a lot of sleep, and there's a lot of people down. There's a lot of people down here this weekend, and you're going to be a busy guy. And I got to tell you, I really appreciate it. We are. Did you have any questions for me?
Well, Keith, I just want to say one thing about I want to thank you for, basically believing in me, basically, and then you and Sean for, having me at this, Xposure 101 and the recognition that you guys are bestowing on 5 of the photographers here. I was really humbled by that. I was really taken back by that and stuff like that, as I told you that before. So it's like, I want to thank you guys and thank, for what you're doing and stuff. And it's really good stuff. And I'm proud of what you've done, to be honest. And sometimes, like I say, you may not have heard that from anybody. And if not, thank you.
And Terrell was talking about the Legends Award. This is the first time we've offered this. Our conference is 2 years old. And what we're doing this year is we're offering an award, or we're presenting an award to 5 photographers. It's called the Legends Award, and Terrell is a recipient of that. And it's something that's near and dear to us. These 5 photographers are people that have been cutting edge, and they've done things that just has not been done in our industry. They've done it well and consistently, and those are the criteria for that award. And Terrell has definitely done that. He's deserving of it. And I hope that we can discover many more photographers, along those lines, not just African American, but just people of color, women. Matter of fact, let me ask you a question. As far as mentors go, like, who do you look up to as a photographer?
Well, there's there was a female photographer from when I was first coming up, and she's a portrait photographer, and I took her class, and I'm losing the blank on her name, which it was on the tip of my tongue there for a minute, but I learned a lot from her and how to see light, and that's always stuck with me, right? From a sports side, even coming up, I was a big Walter Yost fan, Sports Illustrated photographer, and back in the day and stuff like that. So Really aspired to Matthew Jordan Smith. I mean, I've helped him out many times when he's teaching in the Bay Area and things like that too as well. And and what he's done in photography and speaking and teaching. I mean, you like you say, you look up to these guys, and then next thing you know, you're standing right next to him.
Oh, isn't that crazy?
So, yeah.
So you guys, we're gonna wrap up right here. Terrell, thank you for taking time out for this again. And how do we find you? What's your social media platform?
Well, it's funny. I mean, because I'm so busy and working in the NFL, you got to be careful when what you post, right? So I'm pretty guarded on that part. If you went to like Instagram and I'm on there as 49ers official photog on that. Twitter, I'm like on it's T Lloyd 49 for that one. And basically you'll see a lot of stuff. I mean, I don't make a lot of comments on anything. I just post photos.
Yeah.
Right. But working full time at the stadium with the 49ers, I mean, it's a 10, 12-hour day, to be honest. And so it's kind of hard to really stay active, but I got to get more active when, time permits and stuff like that. And I don't have my website up right now. It's like, I took that down about, 3 years ago. But I think, I was just thinking recently, I need to put stuff on there. I have a little blog on there for people to go to and see stuff and see images and really just have galleries out there of all the stuff I do and show some of the past stuff I do from weddings and from portraits and my corporate business that I had out there to show people like, here's what I've done. Here's some of the things that, how I've done stuff like that. So I think within the next year coming this year, I think I'll bring that back in and, we can rehash on that where everything's at.
Definitely. Thank you once again. If you guys are, if you're still with us and you're tuned in, this is the Kilo Bravo Delta Zone. You guys know how I do it. We keep it real official around here. And look, I'm posting weekly. Weekly podcast, and you can definitely find us on Twitter. That's our, I like to say, our stronghold. You guys, I'm a Twitter guy, so you can definitely find us. I'll be tweeting out this broadcast on a pretty regular basis. And T. Lloyd, thank you again. I will see you guys next time in the Kilo Bravo Delta Zone. This is the Keith B. Dixon Podcast Zone. It's official. Peace.